Thank you. That was beautiful. Good evening. My name is Beth, and I'm an alum of Marquette University and the Casa de la Solidaridad Study Abroad program in El Salvador. And I'm Natalie, a John Carroll University alum. And Beth and I are both students at the Jesuit School of Theology in It is a privilege for us to be here tonight. And we are here because we have been inspired by the witness of lay women like Celina and Elba Ramos. We are here this evening on the 23rd anniversary of the deaths of Celina and Elba Ramos and their Jesuit companions. When they were murdered, El Salvador was in the midst of civil war. The right-wing government was lashing out against guerrilla forces and unjustly targeting innocent people who were perceived to be a threat. During this time, the campus of the University of Central America, or the UCA, was bombed by government forces at least 15 times. The army broke into the campus twice, and on several occasions, students were killed. The brutal murders that happened on the night of November 16, 1989, were the culmination of a process of oppression to silence voices crying out for justice.
They took place, as Jesuit John Severino cites, because Jesuit university communities have the power of the word, the instrument to shape society. The mission to be people for and with others is a dangerous one. The community at the UCA was a community of people who had the courage to speak up against injustice. They had the courage to tell the truth.
The late Jesuit Dean Berkley writes of this time. The killings at the UCA took place during a major guerrilla offensive that began on Saturday, November 11, 1989. The high command of the armed forces gathered at their headquarters a kilometer away from the UCA.
In fear of losing the capital city and perhaps the war, the armed forces decided to rocket the poor communities where the guerrillas were now entrenched, and to act on a long hit list of civilians critical of the government and the armed forces.
Almost all on this death list, including labor leaders, opposition politicians, and some clergy, had gone into hiding once the offensive began. The 6 Jesuits did not.
Neither had their housekeeper and her daughter, Elba and Celina Ramos. Despite the violence, they stayed in the UCA community anyway.
At the time, Elba Ramos was 42 years old. Her daughter Celina was 13 and was just beginning her first year of high school. Elba worked for the Jesuit community as a housekeeper, cooking and cleaning and making sure the residence was in order.
Elba's husband and Celina's father, Abdulio, lived in a house on the UCA campus. That night, as violence was escalating around the UCA, Abdulio stayed in their home, and Elba and Celina slept in a small room near the Jesuit community's dining room, where they thought it might be safer.
They did not leave their community. When the armed forces attacked the Jesuit residence, these 2 women were shot with 1 bullet each. When they did not die immediately, they were shot again. The next morning, Abdulio was the first to find the bodies of his wife and daughter. Elba's body was wrapped around Celina's, trying to protect her from the bullets.
Elba and Celina were murdered alongside the Jesuits. They were murdered because of their courage to stay in their community. their loving witness with the prophetic university community was too much of a threat to the evil regime. Along with their Jesuit companions, these women sent us a powerful message. And this message, sisters and brothers, tells us something about God.
What exactly do these poor Salvadoran lay women martyrs tell us about God? Undoubtedly, they concretely shared in the compassionate, loving witness of the life of Jesus.
As Christians, we look to Jesus for a tangible portrait of our loving God. From the Gospels, we can imagine Jesus as he was when he walked on this earth. We don't have to stretch our imaginations too far to see how Elba and Celina's life mirrored Jesus' life in many ways.
Not only did Jesus come from a poor background, but he also chose to surround himself with those marginalized by society. As economically poor people, Elba and Celina's power lay in being a witness of God's love.
Jesus washed the feet of his disciples before he died. Elba cleaned up after her Jesuit companions, washing their dishes and their clothes.
Jesus knew his death was imminent. He stayed in Jerusalem anyway. Elba and Celina knew that their lives were in danger too, especially since they associated with the public, prophetic witness of their Jesuit companions. They stayed at the UCA anyway.
Tonight, to honor these women, Celina and Elba Ramos, we challenge each and every one of you to look to the signs of the times and discover the Elbas and the Celinas in our midst.
Celina and Elba represent the people cleaning our Hyatt hotel rooms.
They are the people cleaning the bathrooms at our universities, high schools, and parishes.
They are the people serving us in our dining halls and cafeterias.
They are those who daily show us the face of the living God through their livelihood and their humble service to others in the community.
The witness of Elba and Celina calls us to recognize that God is constantly revealing God's self to us through those whose voices aren't necessarily as loud or as obvious as a professional theologian or a member of the clergy. These everyday theologians in our midst show us the life of Jesus.
Today, Elba and Celina call upon each of us to imagine and hope in a better, more just and peaceful world. They call you, sisters and brothers, to recognize the absolute, utter importance of finding God in all things, especially in times when it is obvious that God is working through those with or without academic credentials, and those with or without social status.
Elba and Celina share with us a profound expression of God's love. They challenge us and call us to stay anyway, to remain in places of discomfort, to be with our school communities, our church, and our world through grief and pain, through joy and hope, through oppression and sorrow. Elba and Celina ask us to stay anyway.
Tonight, in memory of Elba and Celina, may our prayer be that we discover God in our midst, in the midst of our neighbors, in a world and church bound both by profound pain and profound hope. May we find the courage to challenge injustice and stay anyway. Thank you.